Listen to the Vibes, hosted by Coyote Night. Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes broadcast network. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm here with my good buddy, Chris Hopkins.
Hello.
And we have Mr. Dave Freetage, all the way from Ohio. And we're just going to let Dave tell us all about himself. He is a martial artist and a police officer. And we're going to give him the floor. Tell us about you, Dave.
All right, guys. Hi, I'm Dave Freetage. I live in Columbus, Ohio. Actually, I'm in Grove City, which is right outside of Columbus.
Ooh, Grove City. Grove City.
I hear that. I've been a police officer for almost 18 years with Columbus. I also have been a martial artist for almost 26 years. I own my own gym, Grove City Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's my plug. Hey, I'm a Jiu-Jitsu black belt for about 8 years now. Been a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been training Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu since about 94. So at the academy, at the Division of Police, I teach at the academy a lot now. I'm still assigned to patrol, but I spend a lot of time teaching recruits and current officers in the police academy because of my background.
Oh, nice. So what got you into doing martial arts?
You know, I got out of high school and I needed something physical to do. I played football in high school and I had to have something out of high school. So I went through the summertime, was kind of lazy back in 94, and right in fall, I started then. And like everybody, I'm 44 years old now. Everybody about my age, we saw the movies, you know, Kickboxer and Bloodsport and things like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I want to do that. So I tried to seek it out and become the best Jean-Claude Van Damme impersonator I could.
I hear you. Man,
you know, it was right about that time, too, when UFC came out in 93. And I watched the first UFC with my best friend at the time, and we sat there, and I was in awe by, you know, little Hoist Gracie, 170 pounds, trashing these big dudes. And I'm pretty small myself, and so it's something I really wanted to get into. So,
yeah. So, you know, what's the discipline behind it, you know, getting up and doing what you do every day?
That's an interesting question. At first, it was pure, like, excitement. Just every day I trained. I was going to school full-time, working full-time, you know, going to Ohio State, working my way through college and everything. And I still went and I trained every day that I could. Every day we were open back then. And it was just the constant learning. It was driving me to learn the whole time, you know. And it wasn't for a few more years that I got into, like, competitions and such, you know, grappling competitions, kickboxing, things like that. It took a while. At first, it was just pure learning aspect is what I wanted to do.
Well, you know, those folks here in Texas, the only thing we like out of Ohio is Zeke. So,
well, he's one of my favorites too.
I did a joke about Taco Charlton, and they, like, everybody in Dallas just lost. Like, I've got like Ohio comedy coming. I mean, Ohio. Right. I got a Bobby Carpenter joke coming up too. I know they're mad about Bobby Carpenter.
Yeah, they know him.
You want to ask a question, Chris?
No, just really wanting to kind of really fill in and talk about, you know, the whole martial arts instruction. I actually met Dave. I played 8 years of semi-pro football, and it was like right around 2004, started winding down after my second knee surgery. And then my first wife was like, I was done playing. She's like, you're not going to sit around the house here. And it's funny, back in 94, my wife would always get we'd go to the video store, and she would get horror movies. And I hated watching horror movies, but then I saw, like, the UFC DVD for, like, UFC 1. And I got it and watched it. And I was kind of looking at it because the way the commentary was like, oh, that's some crazy dangerous stuff. It's like, they're actually going to kill somebody. And it's like, and that little dude beat the hell out of him with his shirt somehow. It's like, how the hell do you beat a dude 3 times your size with a shirt? It's like, I hope I never run into one of those dudes because I'm going to go wild and run. And then after football, I was just, you know, kind of watching it, and I was a fan of UFC. I really kind of got back into it where there's a friend of mine, my best friend in high school was a wrestler, Charlie Emmel. He would always tell me about Mark Coleman. the Ohio State wrestler who was one of the first UFC heavyweight champions. But he was going to Japan like when it was all still developing, like in 91, 92, when it was just shoot fighting, when they were like almost no rules and stuff. So it was Kevin Randleman and then a guy that was really close with Randleman that wrestled with him that passed away. I mean, Coleman, there was a guy that was a friend of Mark Coleman's, Kevin Randleman, that passed away. And Charlie Emmel kept saying, it was like, man, you could be like Kevin Randleman, you should wrestle. And I was like, I never wrestled. But then he kept telling me about them fighting in Japan. And then I saw Kevin Randleman and how he fight. It was like, whoa. It was like, wow. It was like, he was like my height, but he looked like a He-Man doll dipped in chocolate with like blonde hair, with like the light. And it's like, there was this dude from Ohio that knew people like me, that was like me, that was going all over the world, win, lose, or draw, fighting anybody. So then I became a fan then. And then after football, The Ultimate Fighter came on. And this is the connection with you. It was the season that Matt Brown was on there. And just his accent, him being from Xenia, and a lot of the guys that I played football with were from Xenia. Actually met Jason Riley and a few of those guys, the Buckeye guys, few guys that I played football with. Now, my friend Frank White, that he actually trained with Jason Riley in London, and then they went to Buckeye. He had a fight, and it was barely regulated. It was supposed to be an amateur fight. And the guy came in, he had pro gloves. He like threw strikes on the ground. He basically broke all the rules, and Frank wound up winning by disqualification. But his face got totally destroyed. My wife was like, well, you can go out there and train, but it's like you're never, ever going to fight, off of those guys. So then we saw The Ultimate Fighter, and they had Matt Brown. I was like, well, this dude's from Ohio. And then he's like, yeah, I'm from Columbus MMA in Grove City, Ohio. I was like, I looked in, I was like, that shit's around the corner. I was like, can I go? I was like asking my mom, can I go? I still remember it was like the first fucking day of kindergarten where me and Tammy walked in. I'm looking at all this stuff. And it was you, it was all the gang was still together. Dustin Ware, the whole crew was still there. And like, I'm sitting there like asking stuff and looking around and asking about fighting. And she's talking and she looked at Dustin and said something about, what are your rules and regulations on fighting? And he just kind of smirked. He's like, before anybody gets in the cage or a ring here, like you get trained, you have to get cleared by all 3 instructors and you have to actually train. She's like, okay, yeah. So then I trained actually like for 3 or 4 years there at Grove City, Columbus MMA, off and on, spotty. I would come and hit the bag and learn, but I really never sparred or did anything. But it was an atmosphere where everyone was humble. There weren't any bullies. It was a learning environment. I remember the first time I came in there, and I was even bigger than it, man. I was like 185, 190, really muscular. And I got on the mat with this dude. He looked like Doogie Howser. I was about 31. He had to be like 18, probably about 140 pounds. And the more pressure I applied, the worse was it. I felt like origami. And it was like, I was laughing while he was beating my ass. And when you can get to that point where you can enjoy learning, and then you have the heart and the bravery, like, okay, this might be a little bit physically discomforting, but I'm enjoying learning and I'm getting physical education and I'm building myself. And that's why I kind of think that what Dave does is so important right now, because if you have officers and Leos that are trained in hand-to-hand combat and they've had that, when those situations arise and your hair stands up in fight or flight, you got that 1 or 2 little seconds where things slow down and you can analyze things where it's not as quick to get caught up in the moment and be more reactive.
Yeah, the kids nowadays, they really need the discipline.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
They're too wild and crazy, and they're all wrapped up.
The beautiful thing about not just martial art, because the combat sports is big, but and people in combat sports say this: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a cult, because there is no, like, if you LeBron James is gonna be LeBron James. You just walk on the field and you're that. Like somebody like Ezekiel Elliott, he's gonna be that. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you're big, tall, strong, all your physical attributes, all your arrogance can be used against you. The only thing that will make you great in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is time and dedication. It just don't work like that. There ain't no shortcuts, ain't no bullshit. You can go somebody and get a cheap belt, and you'll never be in competition, so you know you're never real. And then when you do get in competition, you get exposed. But it's an art where you can beat the crap out of each other and not have any real physical damage except for, some tired ligaments, and you get tired. So you can learn at full speed. And if you're willing to humble yourself and put that gi on and actually show up and do something that's going to be hard, it changes you as a person, because you're going to have to get the shit beat out of you 3 years minimum. 3 years of ass whoopings.
You don't like this stuff, do you, Chris?
Oh, I fucking love it, man. It changed my life. It gave me, it rebirthed me. It made me into like a superhero. Man, take a bunch of ass whoopings, get the shit beat out of it.
Right.
So, Dave, somebody like me who's not real familiar with it, explain to me exactly what it is. Sure.
If you take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by itself, in short, the way I explain to people is I say it's like wrestling with submissions. It is different, of course, than wrestling, because there's not the positional points and such. You're not trying to pin somebody. I'm trying to submit you. I'm trying to make you tap or make you quit using chokes, joint locks, and such. With that said, I'm in Ohio, and everybody here wrestle just about. So all my guys have a real hard style of jiu-jitsu compared to some places, because they use that wrestling base. They have that wrestling hips. We do have takedowns. A lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms, they're known for not having takedowns at all, but your fight ends up on the ground. How's it get there? We focus a lot on our takedowns. We focus a lot on our wrestling skills also. So when people first, inquire to me about what jiu-jitsu is, I just tell them it's wrestling with submissions. And that's kind of the in short version to get to it. And then once they show up, they realize, yeah, it's different than wrestling itself, of course. But those submissions, it adds so much. But like I said, being here in the Midwest, being in Ohio in particular, being such a big wrestling state, everybody here is very familiar with wrestling. So that's kind of the easy way I explain it to people.
Yeah, here in Cedar Park where I live, there's a gym not too far from here. And I actually talked to the guy that runs the place. The name of the place is Gracie Barra. And the guy that runs it, he's been like a national champion or something in it. But heck of a nice guy. It amazes me how somebody that can have that kind of abilities and power to them are very humble. You'd
Sure.
think if I can go kick everybody's butt up and down the street, you walk out like with your chest, pumped up.
I mean, but no group.
Nobody's like that.
Is infallible. There's no one perfect group of humans, but I've kind of learned through it that even people that I may not get along with that are in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they don't take themselves as seriously, like black belts that that because they've had to do the work. And it's and then if you put that type of time in, you've been hurt, so it's what it's like to be on both sides of it. There's just a lot more respect. And then if it gets to the point where you really do piss a person off that's high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you should just be gone already.
So do you do competitions, Dave?
I do. Of course, being older, you go in your age brackets and such also. Yeah, I haven't competed this year because of COVID-19, of course. I was planning on competing this year. Again, I was going to make this my retirement competition year because it would have officially spanned 4 separate decades. So I started competing in the 90s, and I wanted to go those 4 decades of competition. So I was really looking forward. This year was going to be my banner year, kind of going to go out from competition and call it quits. Might have to wait another 18 months or so. We'll see what goes on.
Hey, I've learned watching the movies, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still kick everybody's butt. Look at Mr. Miyagi.
Right. Well, I have had tournaments where I go to and there's no one my age, and you just jump in the adult bracket and go. So it does happen, yeah. But yeah, I still compete periodically. The last few years has been about twice a year, 3 times a year. That's good enough for me, man. I got 3 kids and work full time, so it's hard to put everything together.
On top of that, speaking of competition, man, you got some guys that you've been training since amateurs that are pro now with 4 or 5 fights under their belt and are really starting to surge up. If COVID hadn't happened, might have started, getting sniffs from some majors. So tell us about the fighters that you got coming up that are about to hit the next level, and we can talk a little bit more about the gym too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I don't focus on MMA at my gym in particular. You know, our focus is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What seems to happen to some of these guys who are pretty talented is they do the Jiu-Jitsu classes, they do the Muay Thai classes, and they say, man, I'd like to see how this is, see if it really stands up in the cage, see if I can do it. After they get about to the blue belt level, I'll put them in the cage if they want to, of course. And it's a like you said earlier, it's a really personal decision. And if they do it, cool. And we'll train to the best of our ability. We do have MMA classes also, so they go for it. Our up and comers, man, we got 3 pros now, 3 young pros, and Jake Miller, who's he's a stud, man. He fights at 155. He's one of the top ranked guys in Ohio. And I have 2 other younger guys. I have Michael Arrieta, who just turned 20 years old.
He's only 20? I thought he was older than that.
No, he's only 20. He's undefeated as an amateur. He just turned pro at the Arnold Classic weekend there, won that fight, of course. He's a monster. I mean, he's a big, tall dude. He's like 6'2". He was fighting 155, but because he's so young, he kept growing. So now he's fighting 170. He'll probably end up being a 185er eventually because of his frame. His stand-up is really coming along. We got a boxing coach working with him. He's doing our Muay Thai, of course. His jiu-jitsu is on another level, as you probably know. He's very close to his brown belt. So an MMA fighter, if you're close to brown belt, you're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Another young guy I have is Josiah Harrell. He's a cannonball, man. His wrestling ability is on a whole nother level. And also, he's probably the biggest like weight cutter and best at it that I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
I mean, you know me, Chris, and you know how short I am.
Yeah.
Joey's about an inch shorter than me, and we had a fight scheduled. And they called and said, "Hey, we need you in 6 weeks." Okay, 155. Okay, and he was at 205, and he dropped 50 pounds in 6 weeks, and made it. I mean, he's a monster. So his athleticism, he might be one of the better athletes I've ever coached. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I mean, like you said, I coached Matt Brown before he got in UFC for Muay Thai. Josiah is probably the single best athlete I've had, like explosiveness and just like mentally tough. All 3 of those guys, though, they all have something special to them. They're all three pro for a reason. They dominated at the amateur level. Jake Miller's one of the toughest guys I've ever met. And he's the type of guy you can hit in the face with a baseball bat and he just keeps coming at you. It's a nightmare, you know. And like I said, Michael, his jiu-jitsu is on another level. His build helps him out so much with his stand-up. And then Josiah, his wrestling and jiu-jitsu, I mean, it's very good. And his stand-up is really coming along. So the whole quarantine didn't hurt him that much, man.
I kind of think, too, is like the thing about all 3 of those guys is those are like homegrown fighters. It's like, you know, I've bounced around everywhere. And there's so many different gyms and camps and people bouncing around. It's like, oh, well, I used to train with these guys, and now I'm over here. And you have, you know, different. I'm not gonna go into it, but it's really nice to be able to see you be able to take some guys from, you know, young and to be able to develop them as people and athletes and get them to the point where, you know, they're actually making a name. And I think once stuff starts, especially Jake, I think once everything opens back up, and then because the UFC is trying to do events, but like stuff like Bellator is shut down, Legacy. So even the stepping stones to the UFC are shut down. But I think that probably around September or so, everything's going to fly back open. And I think you're going to wind up seeing some good contracts.
Yeah. You know, and the thing about our gym, too, is we talk about having these fighters. And those are just the 3 current pro fighters I have, you know, who are active right now. But we got guys who aren't active who go in and spar with these guys every day who kick ass. I mean, Avery Arellano. Avery is a stud amateur fighter. He just never turned pro and just like, I don't want to fight right now. Just took time off. But he's still doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling and Muay Thai the whole time. And so from his last MMA fight where he was just crushing it, was I think ranked number 2 in the state of Ohio, he just stopped fighting, but it's done nothing but get better and better and better the whole time. And it's been like 2 or 3 years now. And
I'm going to bring up a name. I'm going to bring up a name and you're going to smirk because what you just said, it's sometimes the people that you actually see in the cage fighting in the ring are far from the most dangerous person at the gym. And I think of when I first started training, Dinos Angeles.
Yeah.
Tony was like, don't spar with him. It was like everyone I ever came across is like, don't spar with Dinos. It's like, he's going to try to get you to spar with him. Do not spar with this man.
Yeah. Dinos is rocking, man. He's still training. He's trained up at DJ Nelson's. He lives up north, pretty far up north. He's a brown belt now in jiu-jitsu. You know, he wrestled in college. His wife is actually my oldest son has autism, and he's my son's. She's my son's therapist.
Actually, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And I know that Bridgeway Academy, you guys do like fundraisers. Tell us a bit more about Bridgeway Academy, and you can always help even when there's not a fundraiser. So give us as much info on that as possible.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Tyler is going to be 13 here. I think next week actually. Okay. And we were diagnosed somewhere around 1.5 years, and he's, if you would call it on the autism spectrum, he's more on the difficult end of the spectrum. Yeah. Bridgeway Academy is a private school here in Columbus. It's up north right now, but they're actually buying DeVry over off Alum Creek. They're buying that building. So it's going to be a lot closer to Grove City where I'm at, which is a blessing for us. It'll cut his drive time down in half, you know. But they have K through 12 as far as their programs go. And yeah, being a private school, it's a charity 501(c)(3). Everything is privately funded. They rely on the autism scholarships and things like that. So at my gym, I was like, what can I do? Because if you don't have all the help and backing, say, of your school district, autism scholarship for the state, some people still have to pay a lot out of pocket. So I tried to come up with a fundraiser of things that we could do. So every year at my gym, we kind of do something different and donate all the money to Bridgeway. So we've done it now for, this would be the 5th year. Is that right? I don't remember. Anyway, we've raised $75,000 for them total.
Wow.
Over the years we've been doing it. Yeah. And so it's really helped out. We just put it to their general fund. And like over the summer, for example, they have a summer camp that kids go to for 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And it helps pay for kids to go to their summer camps and stuff like that too. So
is there a link or anything that you can share with me that I can put on our post when I advertise for this?
I can, yeah. I think it's bridgewayohio.org is their website.
I'll make sure I get all that, and we'll get all that info on the gym and Bridgeway before.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, and
you know what the funny thing is like you were really humble. You actually missed the fun part about the fundraiser, Kyle. They would do this thing where they would have their mats open for 24 hours.
Yeah.
The guys would be in there grappling, and they would take different donations. And there would literally be people that cared 24 hours. Dave was in there, like, I think a couple years, you did the whole 24, didn't you?
Yeah, so the first year, funny. The first year, I was like, I'm going to roll with everybody that walks in my gym. I'm going to do 24 hours straight. Well, I was dumb. And what happened was I actually counted. We do 5-minute rounds with like 1-minute breaks. I was 63 straight rounds in, and I started cramping up. And I had cramps for like the next 8 hours, man. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. I had to shut it down. I ended up getting up pretty well and doing it, but that was our 24-hour year. The next 2 years, we did what we called a 100-round challenge. On those years, you had 24 hours to complete 100 rounds of grappling, 100 5-minute rounds, which is like 8 hours or something like that, 8.5 hours. And I did that. The second year, it went a little better for me. And then the third year, we did a 25-round straight challenge. Everybody did 25 rounds straight through with no breaks. And then last year, we did teams. So you had a team, and you did 5 gi rounds, 5 no gi rounds, 5 Muay Thai rounds in a row. So everybody gets together. They get donations, kind of like Pelotonia is the easiest way to explain it, kind of the same kind of format. You get donations from friends and everything else, and then we just put it in a lump sum and donate it.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
And by definition, I pretty much know what autism is, but I've never had to deal with it personally. When you have a child that has autism, are you able to train them in something like that might be able to help them, to deal with it?
It would totally depend on the kid. I mean, autism is known as autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and there's the total spectrum of. So some of the kids are very high functioning, and you could. I have students who are on the spectrum. They're on the higher end of the spectrum, and they can deal with the touch, the contact, the sensitivity of it very well, and it's not too much of a problem. My son, for example, he's nonverbal, so he doesn't speak or anything. So for him, it would be impossible, for him to be able to do something like that. But yes, I have had and currently do have students on the spectrum. So it depends on the person.
I mean, we see commercials about autism and stuff on television all the time, but I don't think anybody really gets to take the time to learn exactly, what it is, and you have to deal with it on a daily basis. So,
sure.
What you're doing, I think, is awesome, but I think people should learn a little bit more about it as well.
Yeah, it teaches you patience for sure. like I said, we've been dealing with it since he's been born, really. And the interesting thing is you get more support than you realize. When he was probably 9 or 10, he's a big kid. When he's probably about 9 or 10, we were at the parking lot at the grocery store, and he decided he was not going to go anymore. And he just kind of fell to the ground like a wet noodle. And I was trying to scoop him up. And I move people for a living, that's what I do. So I'm trying to scoop him up, and I had a guy come running over and I offered to help me. And I'm like, I don't need help. I'm fine. I got it. And I'm trying to do it independently the best I can. So I get him out to my Jeep and I put him in the car and everything. And the guy tells me, he says, I have a son who has autism. He said, he's 4 or 5 years older than your son. He goes, don't worry, it'll get better. He said, if you ever need help, here's my number. So that type of thing has happened more often to me than not. And I don't think it's just like my hometown sort of thing. I think that's everywhere. People like recognize it, see it. And it's becoming one of the things where people know what it is now versus folks that are closer to our age. If you said autism, they thought the movie Rain Man.
All right,
that's really
right.
And it's totally, that could be a type of autism, but it's totally different than that. So.
Yeah, that's why I say people should be more educated so they kind of know, because this is one of those kind of lives that we lead that everybody just assumes what you saw on television or in the movies is the way everything is. And
right.
You just can't be that way.
Right.
And bringing that up, the way things are right now, I think if people took the time to get to know each other, I mean, like in your situation, you're a police officer and they just assume all police officers are the same. They don't see that you deal with what you deal with. And,
sure.
And you're still an awesome human being.
Yeah. I mentioned something and actually, Chris, it's funny that I was actually talking online to Zach one day. And I said, man, I think if people realize that, I'm a police officer, Zach is not a police officer, right? But we're more alike than what anybody would think, and him and I are totally opposite ends of the spectrum of how we look at things and deal with it. But we would ultimately, we have a lot of the same common beliefs.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, that's the reason I wanted to get you on here, is not so much to try to talk about, different political points or scream about, because everybody knows what the hell's going on. Everybody has their opinion, and what we say here isn't going to change or alter that. I just wanted to kind of show that, man, for the most part, when you get off social media and you go outside, the world is still a beautiful place. There are still beautiful interactions going on.
That's right.
People are still living. Your neighbors are still good people. 90% of cops are helpful and are disgusted by what's going on. There's a lot of people who don't understand this. Like a friend of mine here has a friend that was an officer that actually, even if a good officer tries to say something, you don't know what they deal with internally. I'm just going to say that because I know some people who kind of had some stuff on that end. So if you give everyone the respect to try to fix their shit, the shit will get fixed. If everybody's just finger pointing, then nobody's using their hands to work.
Yeah. And I understand. I mean, that's on both sides of the fence. You got to learn to get to know each other. I mean, I reached out to Chris just on a whim on Facebook.
Yeah.
And we started talking, and I mean, actually the thought of race didn't even come up. We just
that's my friend right there.
We got to know each other, and we get along fine, and we pick at each other a lot, but I mean, it's awesome because we took the time to get to know each other.
That's why I wanted to make sure this happened. I'm not going to take too much more of your time. I just wanted to make sure we got the info. Even if you're all out there in hyperspace, you can still buy a Grove City Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu t-shirt. I like the design with the bulldog on there. So we want to get the info for Grove City Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then we also tell us about the Bridgewater Academy again.
Bridgeway, yeah.
Bridgeway Academy. Give us the info on that one more time.
All right, so my gym is Grove City Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The website's pretty easy. GC, as in Grove City, so it's gcbjj.com, and kind of gives you all of our info in there and everything. It's open to everybody. I have 5-year-olds all the way up to my oldest student, I think, is 63. Everybody in between. I have pro athletes, I have soccer moms, and everybody. It's kind of my thing, is I've always thought I could teach anybody. So pretty confident.
Me.
Yeah, right. I taught Chris. But no, for real. I mean, it's open to everybody. We have all kinds of classes. We're open basically 6 days a week, morning and nights. I have a whole staff now versus back in the day, it was just me when I started my own place. So now I have a staff that helps me out. We teach, and Man, we ain't going anywhere. It's pretty big now.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you, me with the way my health is, I think the 5-year-old or the soccer mom could probably kick my butt. So,
Man, there's some tough soccer moms out there. My 5-year-old's a terror. But no, Chris, we were talking about some of that stuff earlier, with everything going on right now. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is the whole George Floyd incident. I mean, the first thing, and I don't know how much you pay attention to Facebook or follow all the time, but one of the very first things that happened, I saw the video. The very next day I came on and I said, that's murder.
mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I know jiu-jitsu very well. I know police tactics very well. This is what I do for a living as a profession. I said, that's murder. And I put that on Facebook. And I be honest with you, I caught a little bit of blowback in private messages from some people. And they're like, man, you can't judge somebody. You don't know all the facts. I'm like, you can't stand on a man's neck for 8.5 minutes. That's murder. Period.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why when I become president, we're just gonna clone like 15,000 of you, and you're gonna be like the like it's gonna be like the clone army from Star Wars. So.
Right.
Right. I'm gonna build the Freetage clone army.
And I try to like on my Facebook posts, I don't really like to get political as much, but I try to like educate people from not only like the self-defense perspective, but also from the police like defensive tactics perspective. That's why the Atlanta issue, I talked about reasonable versus necessary, and how that shooting went and what that was. And explain. And again, I caught some blowback from citizens and cops alike on there and on private messages. Feel like, I can't believe you're saying this. I'm like, but it's the truth. It's kind of the way you have to look at the way it is, And I don't know. I'm not afraid to catch blowback, man. I'm too old to care.
Well, I really don't know too many people that would say that wasn't murder, what happened to George Floyd. I mean, everybody in my circle says the same thing, and it doesn't matter what color they are, they all say the same thing. Yeah. So, and
that's why it's the funny thing that everybody's fighting about it right now. So, we're all fighting over something we agree on. We all agree that we're wrong. We're fighting.
Yeah, it's kind of like being married.
Yeah. I disagree. Yeah, I disagree. In case my wife sees it,
I'm sorry, honey. Don't hit me.
Right.
Yeah, it's a shame that things have come to what they have. I've heard people say, yeah, it was wrong, but he was a bad guy. He'd been in and out of prison all these times. I don't care what he's done. I don't care if he had just murdered somebody. He still is allotted the due process.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed.
So yeah, I don't care. I mean, unless he was about to kill somebody and you took him down, that'd have been different. But
sure, there's always the situations where police involved shootings, they happen, and it's part of the nature of the business. But you have to make sure the police are trained to the best of their abilities. I talk a lot in my trainings for the academy about like stress inoculation. I want to stress you out in our trainings when you're in the academy, because I want when you get on the street, that shouldn't be the first time you've been stressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that you go through stressful situations and scenarios and have dealt with as many things as possible. That way, when you go out there, you've been there and done that and have the tools to deal with it. So that's kind of part of our training also.
So my suggestion has been, and you may disagree, but I think that all officers should have to go through some kind of evaluation every 6 months, because you don't know what they're dealing with in their lives or what they've dealt with out on the street. Being that I live with PTSD myself, you might have an officer out there that has that problem and may snap. So that's why I suggest at least every 6 months they should have some kind of evaluation. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I work for a large department. We have roughly 2,000 officers. We have a psychologist also. And at any time you can go and see the psychologist. We have a psychological eval when you get on the department. But again, my eval was 18 years ago. That has no bearing on today, and nothing bearing on the things that I've seen and done over the last 18 years, as being a street officer. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. Right now they leave it open to the officer, and just in general society, sometimes there's a stigma about going to a psychiatrist or psychologist for things. Just, it's how society is.
It's
some
funny
guys
you say that, because I've been through so many. I had my second therapy session this week. I just started therapy myself, and it was something that I fought. And people with my family and people who were close to me, you should get there. And I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to. And I actually did it. So you're 100% right, and it's actually working wonders in just 2 sessions.
Yeah, and you know, our department also, they started something a few years back. They call it the PAT, the Peer Assistance Team. And I'm actually a member of that. And what that is, it's basically a confidentiality sort of thing where officers can come to you and talk to you individually about situations. And I have all the resources to kind of point them in the right direction to get them help if they need real help too. So that's something that they're trying. So I think Kyle, I think what you mentioned, the mental health side of it is actually becoming an issue now to where people are recognizing it. Like I said, I work for a big department and change is generally slow in bureaucracies. But something like that, our peer assistance team is pretty large now. And that we have our trainings 3-4 times a year. And people oftentimes call me up or text me, hey, I need to talk about this. And it does happen. So they're getting there. They're getting there.
Oh, yeah.
We can wrap it up. I just want to say that how come us three can conduct a more meaningful interview with more content and actual facts and more positive than these so-called major media outlets? I need to check. I need a limo. I'm waiting on my groupies because my girlfriend don't want me no more. So,
well, I can tell you 2 factors. 1, we don't have an agenda. And 2, it's the ego thing.
Yeah.
Everybody has this ego. You know, that's one of the reasons why a lot of officers won't go out and get help, is because of that ego.
Right.
But the same thing, the guy that you're chasing down, he thinks he can get away or whatever, and he's got that ego. That's what gets people hurt. So
yeah, it keeps a lot of.
When they're running on the hilltop, that's not ego. That's cocaine that's making big.
Oh, Chris.
All right, before we say goodbye, one more time, can we get those web addresses so we can get people to give?
Sure. Yeah. The main one, to give, I really appreciate. Sure, is didn't think about that beforehand. But it's bridgewayohio.org, and like I said, that's the school here in Columbus, one of the major schools, and it's pretty well thought of. People move from all over the country to come here to go to the school. So bridgewayohio.org is that website, and they do accept donations on their website also.
Awesome.
So, and for me, mine would just be something more locally for the guys that'd be interested in training. It's gcbjj.com, and that's our website for our gym.
Awesome. All right, and if you would, could you please email me the actual link so I can put those up for you? Will do. I'll get it up here in just a minute. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. I know you're busy all the time, and this is taken away from your family, so we'll let you go.
Thank you so much for your time, Dave.
Yes.
Hey, I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me chit-chat with you guys for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem.
And thank everybody out there that's watching or listening. We appreciate your support, and please continue to come
Hyenas
back.
Fort Worth, June 26th, 9 p.m., baby.
And that too. Thanks again, guys.
All right. We'll see you. Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right, Chris.
That was great.
That was awesome, man.
That was the one. That was the interview that we needed. That was the one that it actually covered all the bases. It was calm. We actually had an officer saying, "It's like, look, I think it's bullshit too." Like that. That was the perfect person to have on there. It didn't have no agenda. Boom. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. That was
He's cool
well
as
worth
fuck,
it.
ain't he?
Oh yeah, I like him.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and on Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.